You're listening to the Armchair Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Armchair Cricket Podcast. This is a podcast focusing on Test cricket by armchair critics of the game. As always, we would like to start by thanking all our listeners for their continued support. Please do continue to listen to us and spread the word about our podcast to your cricket-loving friends. If you haven't done so already, please remember to subscribe to our podcast on whichever platform you're listening to us on, be it Podbean, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Castbox, or anything like that. You can find us easily there by searching for Armchair Cricket Podcast. Do not forget to leave us a rating, preferably 5-star, and provide your feedback. You can reach out to us by email. Our email address is armchair.cricket@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @armchaircrickpod. You can also find us on Facebook. All links are provided in the description box below. Now, continuing with our focus on World Cup team selection, we have a special feature today on the England cricket team. We are joined today by a friend of the podcast, Nakul from Guerrilla Cricket, for this section. So he will join us later in this episode. Now, before going ahead, I would like to introduce my co-host, Ajit. Hello, Ajit. How have you been?
Hi, Giri. I'm doing good. Well, it's been a tiring couple of days with work and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, otherwise things are going fine. How are you?
Yeah, likewise here. I mean, I've had quite a tough week at work, so haven't been able to catch up with a lot of cricket that's been going on, especially IPL.
Mm, mm.
So yeah, look forward to having this podcast episode recorded because I would also like to hear what Nakul has to say, especially because I think he has a different perspective about the cricket team, England cricket team. So look forward to that part. But apart from that, yeah, business as usual, I would say. Shall we start with the trivia then?
All right. So the trivia question from last week was, which New Zealand cricketer was credited as being the first pinch-hitting opener in ODIs, thereafter making it a norm from the other team perspective? So we're already talking about the 1992 World Cup, hence the hint that it was a New Zealand cricketer. So we did not get a lot of right answers. But well, Kanna, the friend of the podcast, has given the right answer. The right answer is Mark Greatbatch, who was sort of a very powerful middle order batsman for New Zealand, but was promoted to open the batting for New Zealand in the 1992 World Cup by Martin Grove, the captain. And he was a part of a bunch of experiments that New Zealand ran. So one of those was also opening the bowling with Deepak Patel, the off spinner, for example. But this one sort of paid off very well for them because they ran rampant in the group stages, if I remember right, in 1992, right? World Cup. Anyway, Mark Greatbatch did very well in that World Cup, and I think he can be credited as one of the first pinch-hitting openers in ODIs. And after this, of course, we remember Sri Lanka followed this format, right? With Sanath Jayasuriya, who's also a middle order Tyro, being promoted to open along with Ramesh Kalavitharana, and the rest, as they say, right? Is history.
History, yeah, indeed, yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, fond memories, especially of Jayasuriya and Kalavitharana. But it's good to know that there was someone else who started this. That was Mark Greatbatch. He was one of my favorite cricketers back then when I was a kid. That was actually that probably is the first World Cup I was able to follow as a child. And I remember him, going after the bowlers in the first 15 overs, and I had never thought of players who were trying to do that. If you remember, somebody, a typical opener like Jeffrey Boycott, for example, would he have done this ever? He would rather take the shine off the ball. He would grind down the seamers, the seam bowling attack in the first 10-15 overs. But I think that was the norm. They were continuing with test with the mentality of test cricket. But this was, I think, a breath of fresh air. I think he did something, and then I think a trendsetter, in my opinion.
Of course, of course. Hence, I mean, we would like to give him credit for what he's been, let's say he started a trend, or let's say he skippered it, Martin Grove, but it worked very well, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, indeed. I mean, talking of great Jeffrey Boycott as an opener, right? We discussed this a bit later when discussing about the final of the 1979 World Cup and how a very slow start with, Jeffrey Boycott and another opener, I think Edrich, it was Bill Edrich, which sort of contributed to England losing. This is when we discussed with Nakul later. I mean, I'm sure our listeners can also weigh in on their opinions on this. All right, going ahead. Let's now look on the next section, which is the IPL highlights section, right? So first of all, we can quickly mention that, well, when Rajasthan Royals beat Sunrisers Hyderabad, they were able to keep their chances in the tournament alive, but that meant Chennai qualified. Kiri, did you have a chance to look at this match?
No, I only saw the news later that CSK, made it through to the qualifiers or eliminator, right? I think that's what it's called now.
Indeed.
So they are top of the table now, as it stands. CSK, right?
Yes. I mean, CSK, I think, have topped the table, and well, if you look at what happened in this match quickly, well, David Warner provided his sort of, steady opening partnership with Kane Williamson sort of opened now that Johnny Bairstow is gone. David Warner made 37 runs out of 32 balls without a single boundary being scored, right? This was interesting. And then Manish Pandey, who came in at number 3, provided the acceleration along with David Warner, and he made a 61 off just 36 balls. But there were not many other contributions down the order. Shankar, Shakib Al Hasan or Deepak Huda did not do much. As a result, they only finished with 160 for 8. And in terms of bowling, Varun Aaron, who came back to the pink clothing, right? He was able to take 2 for 36. And O'Shane Thomas, who's now featuring in the IPL as well, has done well, and he took 2 for 28. And of course, Jaydev Unadkat took 2 for 26, and Shreyas Gopal took 2 for 30. So it was an overall good bowling performance. And Riyan Parag, who bowls leg breaks as well, took 3 for 24 off his 3 overs, rather 0 for 24 out of his 3 overs. As a result, Rajasthan Royals had just 161 to chase, and given that it's in Jaipur, they had the home support backing them, and they got through very comfortably. Ajinkya Rahane, who opened the batting, right, scored 39 out of 34 balls, and then Liam Livingston provided the ballast, or let's say the acceleration, who scored 44 of 26. Sanju Samson batting at 3, scored 48, not out of 32 balls, and took them home. And Steven Smith also had a important cameo of 22 runs. So they effectively won this match very comfortably. When it comes to Sunrisers bowling, there was not a lot to write home about. Shakib Al Hasan opened the bowling with Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, and they were very economical up top, and they kept the Rajasthan Royals batters quiet. But it was not amounting to much in the end. And I think Rashid Khan, who's been very economical this season, continued to do the same. He conceded just 7.5 runs an over and took a wicket as well on his 4 overs. But I think Kaul was very costly, where he went for 48 runs of 4 overs, and that could have been a very big difference between the two teams. And another small news, well, Ashley Turner finally kicked off. I think he was on a 5-duck spree, and he finally broke it. And he took Ashton Turner, he took a run.
Reminds me of Ajit Agarkar.
Yeah.
That?
Well, I mean,
he has a dubious record.
He was called Bombay Duck for a reason, of course.
Yeah, of
Indeed.
course.
That was one of the first matches we would like to review. The second one was when, RCB lost to Delhi Capitals at Kotla, right? So this meant Delhi Capitals qualify for the knockouts, and by winning against RCB at this point in time, they topped the table. So they overtook Chennai Super Kings and topped the table. And RCB are, effectively knocked out. Let me put it like that. But I think we'll discuss this a bit later, where we'll discover that RCB are actually knocked out. But if you were to quickly take a look at this match between Delhi Capitals and RCB, it happened at Delhi. And batting first, Delhi Capitals managed to score 187 for 5. This was a very, very good total on this pitch. It was well above par because they were, Shikhar Dhawan started very positively, and along with Prithvi Shaw. And then Shreyas Iyer took over. So Shikhar Dhawan and Shreyas Iyer made 50s. And then in the end, Sherfain Rutherford hit a rapid 28. and took them to 187. When it comes to the RCB bowling, Umesh Yadav took 1 for 39 of his 4 overs. Washington Sundar opened the bowling with him and took 1 for 29. Yuzvendra Chahal, who's been very economical or more or less been very reliable for his captain this season, took 2 for 41. And Saini, who's also been economical, took 1 for 41. This meant, they had a very tough chase, RCB. Did their best. So Parthiv Patel and Kohli opened and they provided them a good start of 63-run partnership well under 6 overs almost. So Parthiv Patel was the first to be dismissed for a 20 ball 39 and Kohli was playing sort of a holding role, scoring at just 135, making 23 runs. But number 3, number 4 and then on, there were not a lot of contributions there. AB de Villiers made 17, Shivam Dube made 24, Klaasen couldn't get going and just scored 3. Gurkirat Singh and Marcus Stoinis tried their best at the end, but there was too much to do. Gurkirat Singh made 19 ball 27 and Marcus Stoinis made a 24 ball 32. But in the end, RCB fell 16 runs short and they lost this match. And when it comes to bowling, Kagiso Rabada took 2 for 31. Amit Mishra has been doing really well in this IPL and he took 2 for 29. And Akshar Patel, who opened the bowling with Ishant Sharma, took 1 for 26. Right, and Sheffield Rutherford showed his all-round skills, not only complementing his batting with some medium-fast bowling, and he took a wicket in his 1 over. Right, he took the important wicket of AB de Villiers. So when you look at it, it feels like the Sheffield Rutherford could be the next. Well, we don't know if he'll be the Andre Russell. At least he could be the next Carlos Brathwaite. One feels. What do you think?
Well, I haven't seen him play actually, so look forward to seeing him back.
Right.
Yeah, interesting. They have these crop of players, they're coming in waves, as it were. So yeah, interesting times ahead. I hope he's going to bolster the West Indian limited overs side in the coming years after a stalwart like Chris Gayle retires after the World Cup. So.
I mean, this guy looks like a mid-overs batter. He may not be able to open, but we never know. I mean, there have been some very good converted middle-over batsmen who became
Rohit Sharma, for example.
Indeed, another one. Indeed. So, if you look at, one of the next matches we would like to quickly take a look, of course, is RCB versus RR. That is Challengers Bangalore. They were playing at home against Rajasthan Royals, and this was a very crucial match for both teams. I mean, a result in this match would have been very important for both teams, but unfortunately this match got washed out after they sort of opened or they kept waiting until the very last moment the match could be started with 5 overs apiece, right? So RCB batting first scored 62 for 7. They never got going. Kohli made 25 runs of just 7 balls, but they decided to open with AB de Villiers in place of Parthiv Patel maybe, but it might not have been the right thing to do. And they somehow never got going and they finished 62 for 7 with Shreyas Gopal, who bowled only 1 over, who bowled the second over of the innings actually, took a hat-trick. And it was a very interesting sort of over. I don't know if you saw this, Giri.
No, I didn't catch.
I mean, I was able to catch the reply or let's say the shortened version of the game. And in this case, his first 3 balls were 6, 4 and 2. And his next 3 balls were wicket, wicket, and wicket. So as a result, he took a hat-trick. So the people or the batters he dismissed were Kohli, AB de Villiers, and Stoinis. So it was a fantastic bowling from Shreyas Gopal, who is showing his home team. He represents Karnataka in the first class setup. Yeah. He's showing them what they're missing as he took a hat-trick. So that sort of restricted RCB to just 62. But then when Rajasthan Royals started their reply, it was going well for them because Sanju Samson scored 28 of just 13 balls and Liam Livingston was 11 not out of 7 balls. So sort of it looked like they could chase this down, but the rain intervened and as a result the match got abandoned. What this means effectively is that RCB are knocked out. Right? So RCB have almost lost all chances, including mathematical chances, to qualify. Right?
Yeah.
And Rajasthan Royals' own chances hang by an absolute thread here. A victory here for them would have really helped, right? But unfortunately, they couldn't get it. So, the only good thing to take away from this match was that Shreyas Gopal took a hat-trick. Outside of that, it was a real washout. It was a real, fans kept waiting in the stadium, and the stadium was still about 3/4 full when the match was resumed. But it still didn't matter, unfortunately, and the match could not be finished. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think we have to see if I think RCB have one more match against Kings 11.
Mm-hmm.
No, is that Sunrisers? I think. So if
Yes.
can RCB salvage something out of that and not finish, plumb last basically in the table,
Well,
and so that remains to be seen. That match
mm-hmm.
is placed on Saturday, as I
Right.
understand. So we will we'll see what happens. I think we'll cover that in our next episode.
All right. All right.
But I think RCB probably needs a lot of changes for next season.
Mm-hmm.
They had a guy like Shivam Dubey, for
Right.
example. They paid, I think, in Indian rupees there was about 5 crores.
Wow.
That's a lot of
All
money
right.
for that guy. And then he played, I don't know in how many matches, maybe 2 or 3 matches.
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't even make an impact. I think he probably batted too low in the batting order. So
Mm-hmm.
some changes there. I think those buys that they had. Also,
Right.
Simran Hetmeyer, he was underused, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to think really hard. And Stoinis was not available for the first part of the for the initial part of their campaign. He
Mm-hmm.
was only available, in the middle, and then he's now gone again. I think after this match, he's back on Australian duty. I think. So is
Mm-hmm.
Warner for Sunrisers, of course.
Right. Right.
So they need to check all these things, and they probably need to give a lot more. They need to inject a little more home talent, I would say. Shreyas Gopal was probably making a case here in front of his
Mm-hmm.
home fans.
Right.
They
Right.
already have Yuzvendra Chahal, of course, but then again, you really have to look harder. I think Sangakkara mentioned this in one of his analysis. I think maybe even 3 or 4 weeks ago, when
I see.
when
I
RCB
see.
had lost 3 or 4 matches in a row. He said they don't have enough Karnataka players. They don't have people from the local region. So they have good foreign players like AB de Villiers,
Mm.
and now also Shimron Hetmeyer. But then again, I think Gary Kirsten, I don't know if he'll remain the coach for next season. He probably
Mm-hmm.
will.
Mm-hmm.
If he does, then he has a lot of thinking to do. I mean, I for one am a believer that Virat Kohli should not be given the captaincy of this team. They should promote someone else and let Virat Kohli just focus on his batting. I think he has enough to do already with the Indian cricket team. He is the captain of the limited over side there as well as the test team. So he probably needs a break as well. I don't know how fresh he is for the World Cup after this IPL campaign. Maybe it's good for RCB that they don't qualify for the eliminators. Otherwise, he would probably need to play a couple of extra matches. So I see it that way. But a lot of thinking to do for RCB. I don't know. They need to do something for next season. Otherwise, they will keep languishing there at the bottom,
I
unfortunately.
understand. No, no, I think you're right. They got their team selection strong. They also got their, let's say, the structuring of the entire team wrong. Probably the balance of the team was not right. Correct. And the other thing is that, we keep discussing who's the other potential person that can take over RCB's captaincy if it were to be not,
Mm,
Virat Kohli.
mm,
We earlier thought of, somebody like maybe Moeen Ali, and we always know AB de Villiers is sort of a reluctant captain.
mm.
There is another person here we've obviously ignored. He's been doing well this season, Parthiv Patel.
Yeah.
I mean, it sort of comes out of the blue, I know, but this guy has extensive captaincy experience at all levels in the Indian domestic cricket.
Hmm.
I would say he could still be, taken on as a option if required next season. He's also been a very good performer this season, right? So
Yeah.
as a result, I mean, that would be a good way to for RCB to take this forward, I would say,
Mm,
right?
mm.
All right. Okay. So if you were to just quickly take a look at the upcoming matches, I think there's a match between KKR and Kings 11's Punjab. So this is going to be very crucial for both teams again, very much like what happened between, Rajasthan Royals and RCB. So sort of both their qualifications hang
I
on
don't know
this.
why you like Deccan Chargers so much, Ajit.
I myself don't know. If I ever were to come across this myself, I'll try to. Well, we can talk about it in one of the episodes if you
No
want.
worries. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, going on with our next section. Uh, Now, with the World Cup team preview section here, today we are going to preview England, who are one of the favorites for the World Cup. They are playing their home World Cup, of course. And to help us review the England team and their chances at the upcoming World Cup, we are welcoming back Nakul Pande, who'll be from Guerrilla Cricket, who's joining us again. Hello, Nakul. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Hi there, Ajit. Good to speak to you again.
I understand you're also preparing some stuff for yourself. After all, Guerrilla Cricket has some important stuff tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah, we certainly do. So we're recording this on the eve of England's one-day international against Ireland in Malahide. So I'm doing my statistical preparations for that game, particularly focused on the Ireland squad. Although the England squad is a little bit new look from certainly from what it'll be at the World Cup. A lot of players auditioning for spaces. But yeah, I'm doing my pre-game prep.
Indeed. I mean, I'm really looking forward to hearing the commentary tomorrow on Guerrilla Cricket. And I don't care whether it rains or not, but I'd rather hear the game called. But otherwise, I'm happy to hear the waffling going on. I really like you guys.
Yeah, I would imagine. I imagine this will be going out after that game, but the latest forecast we have is it will be cold but dry.
All right, that's then a typical, let's say May day, I'm sure. I started my season this last weekend, and we had a practice game, and I could feel the chill in my bones, really. So I wish you all the best. All right then, going on. So maybe we can take a quick look at the historical perspective of how England have done in the World Cups, right? So England have been one of the stronger teams at the World Cups. They have finished runner-up thrice. So we know 79, 87, and 1992, right? And the first three World Cups were also held in England. So they have had some home condition experience previously. So I think also as the upcoming World Cup is also going to be held in England, they start as home favorites. And also for a change, their team is really nicely peaking, isn't it, Nakul?
It certainly has been over the last, since the last World Cup, really, since Owen Morgan took over the captaincy in the wake of the disastrous 2015 World Cup from that New Zealand series, where New Zealand, led by Brendan McCullum, came over and kind of showed England a potential template for how to play, is that in terms of being hyper aggressive, in terms of having very clear roles and having a real freedom within the squad, and that's been very carefully built by England over the last 4 years under Morgan's leadership, with Trevor Bayliss and Paul Farbrace behind the scenes as well. With some news in recent time has people looking for things to panic over, as ever. That sort of that perennial thing of England potentially looking for reasons to panic before the World Cup. They've gone into World Cups before where up until maybe a few months before, or a few weeks before, they've been going one way, and then they've had sudden last-minute panic changes. I think a lot of that is native English pessimism, or latent English pessimism. Rather, I think that thing that a lot of sports fans will be very familiar with is that they have a just general sinking feeling whenever it comes to the possibility of their team winning anything. But I think a lot of these issues will resolve themselves. Some of them, particularly the ones that have made the news over the past couple of days, will have to be resolved in other ways. But I think the minor injuries to the likes of Jason Roy and the resting of some of the IPL players, I think that'll resolve itself. And England are a very strong team. This is the best one-day team that England have ever produced, and they've shown the way for the other teams that will be trying to take this World Cup.
Indeed. So from a historical perspective, England have played 73 matches at the World Cups. They have won 41, they have lost 30, and there have been 2 no results, right? And of course, we all remember the famous finals, the 79, 87, and 92. Each of them are famous for their own reasons. But if you were to look back quickly at the finals, the first one is, the 1979 final, where the West Indies were sort of beginning to hit their stride, and they got caught cold by a certain Sir Vivian Richards, isn't it? The 138 in the final. Nakul, do you remember, or have you seen any highlights?
I'm aware of the. 75 was the first World Cup final, kicked off in less than auspicious fashion by one Mr. Sunil Gavaskar. with his now legendary go slow. But yeah, 75. Viv Richards tormented England in World Cup finals along with Collis King, and a famous fifer by for Joel Garner bowling from basically so high that he was coming down from the ball was coming out above the sight screen.
Indeed.
But I was talking just now about how this modern England team playing with freedom and playing with real kind of clear aggression. The story could not have been more different in the early days. England set a really fairly achievable total particularly in 60 overs, and then Braley and Boycott batting in a manner completely not suited to the circumstances, and once they got out, the pressure was on the middle order to the extent that they just had to swing at everything, and players weren't as good then as swinging at everything as they are now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Gooch did his bit. I think he had scored 32 runs at almost 115, which is unheard of in those days, I'm sure. But mainly the lower middle order of David Gower, Botham and Larkins and Phil Edmonds, they couldn't do too much. And as a result, you were right. I mean, they were already facing at 8 and over. And in those days, probably 8 and over or 9 and over was unheard of, right? So another thing, there is urban legend, isn't there, about the final that I think Clive Lloyd dropped a catch of Jeff Boycott pretty early on. It might have been in the slips of the gully. I think he was more gully fielder, right, Lloyd? They say he may have dropped it on purpose.
I have seen the footage, and Clive Lloyd was a very safe pair of hands, and it looks a very achievable drop by his standards. I think it's pretty difficult for a cricketer to get that instinct out of them to just catch the ball as it comes to them. I think dropping a catch on purpose seems unlikely. Whether he was just then in the back of his mind thinking that maybe don't go at it with just something with it was just subconsciously holding back a little, we will never know. But it was of some benefit, I think, for the West Indies that Boycott and Brearley's partnership lasted as long as it did.
Indeed. Well, I mean, they batted for almost I think a best part of nearly 35 overs, almost 37 overs or 40 overs, and they had only 129 on the board. So that was a killer there, I think, right? Anyway, I mean, also, of course, you can't take too much away from the way the West Indians bowled, especially the big bird, Joel Garner. I think Colin Croft had a 3-for, and I think Michael Holding had a 2-for at, a 2 run rate of 2, actually, economy rate. So that's all really fantastic bowling. And they had to get through 60 overs, 120 overs in a day as well. It was a long summer day, for sure. Still, I mean, I think it was the summer solstice, but still, if you can imagine such a 120 days, 120 overs in a day. We can't even imagine that these days.
No, particularly with 4 fast bowlers and 4 fast bowlers with proper long run-ups.
Indeed. All right. So that was the 1979 World Cup. When you go on to the 83 World Cup, well, it was a slightly different story. This was in the subcontinent at Kolkata, and I think Australia sort of surprised England. England were the form team going into the final.
I think you may have jumped to 87. 83 was also in. 83 England. 83 was in England.
Yeah. You're right. Well, I was just going through the next World Cup where they made the final. I was looking at their best performances, but sure. So in the 87 World Cup. I was talking about the 87 World Cup final where they played Australia. What are your thoughts on those? Do you remember anything much about it?
That one hasn't quite achieved the legendary status of 79 or 92, particularly because of how vivid those color photos are. But it's the infamous reverse sweep, I believe, is the really the thing that would stand out to English cricket fans of a certain vintage.
Right. I mean, Mike Gatting, the skipper, right? He was going at 90, and I don't know what he was doing when he reverse swept and was caught by the keeper. Bowling of border, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah, that's right. And you wouldn't necessarily think so much of it. Now, Mike Gatting was a very good player of spin, but the reverse sweep was not a shot that many people would have practiced. Then Gatting was good on the orthodox sweep, the power sweep, and also good down the ground. But I think it's one of those. There's a thing called defensive decision making, whereby you, rather than doing the thing that is more likely to get you the results, you will do the thing that will make you look least bad if you fail at it. And I think so. You get more stick, more criticism for trying something unorthodox and failing than trying something orthodox and failing.
Right.
I think actually Mike Gatting could be somewhat applauded for going against that. If he manages to get a little bit more on it, and it goes for 4 and it goes on. That's one of those sort of cricketing sliding doors moments. But I think it's an execution error as much as anything. But I think the fact that it's become such an infamous moment in English cricketing folklore, and you can say the Gatting reverse sweep, and people know what you're talking about. Exactly. I think it's because it sticks in the memory more because it was an unorthodox thing, particularly then.
All right. But also I think his partnership with Lamb was very crucial, and they were scoring at a very, very good rate, because initially Bill Athey had sort of eaten up a few of the balls, but him and Graham Gooch had laid the foundation that was capitalizable, so to say. But again, the sort of lower middle order, I think Peter Downton, John Embury, Phil DeFritis. Once Lamb and Gatting got out, I think they did their best. There are a couple of decent contributions down the order, but they couldn't get them across. So that was a very narrow loss. I think this will really sting. I mean, this was probably the closest England have come to the cup, and this loss by 7 runs would probably hurt them a bit, because Australia weren't all that good, and they didn't have all that many great bowlers. There was Craig McDermott, and there was Bruce Reid opening the bowling. There was Simon O'Donnell, there was Steve Waugh as the sort of bowling all-rounders. And then you had Tim and Alan Border. There was no Glenn McGrath or Warren or any one of those, legends, so to say, that was in that bowling lineup. Probably that's why England fancied themselves as well. This was a bit of a downer, right?
Sure, it's long before that dynasty that won those consecutive World Cups established itself, and it's long after Lydian Thompson had retired. It's the beginnings of Alan Border moulding that team of players picked perhaps more on a character and an ability to play to the team ethos than anything else. They're more perhaps prodigiously talented players who didn't get as many chances as they should have done. Ian Botham's on record saying that he thinks 92 is the best chance they ever had, because he thinks they were the best team at the time. But 87 is also a good candidate.
Right, of course. But I mean, then we move on to 92. Well, this is Pakistan's greatest moment in one day, I think, even surpassing their Champions Trophy victory from recent years, because I mean, they won the World Cup, and an aging, nonetheless, a very powerful Imran Khan led them to the World Cup. And well, they made only 249 in the final, and that was sort of slightly under par, if anything, right? Because I remember a bit of the final. I was watching it. I was very young, but I remember that there was a stranglehold that sort of Pakistan had over England in the middle overs, because Neil Fairbrother was the only guy doing anything. The England top order failed a bit, chasing 250 to win. And at least Botham, who was usually more successful with the bat in the tournament than the ball, could not get going. And then Graham Gooch and I think Graham Hick put on a small partnership, but basically the top 4 sort of had failed, and then it fell upon Neil Fairbrother and again Alan Lamb. Probably he could have done something redeeming, but he only could make 31. Then again the lower middle order: Chris Lewis, Dermot Reeve, Derek Pringle. These guys couldn't get them home. It was too much in the end, right? Do you have any more to add? Any nice memories?
Yeah, so the famous sort of turning point of that game is the consecutive dismissals of Alan Lamb and Chris Lewis by Wasim Akram, an absolute exhibition. Particularly the one to Alan Lamb, the one from round the wicket. That it's even looking at it, and I've watched it many times. Even looking at it, even when you know what's going to happen, it looks impossible. For
Yes.
someone to be able to move the ball that much,
Yeah.
coming in from that angle, coming in from round the wicket, it's not just one that it doesn't just come in and hold its line. It comes in and actually moves away. It's almost unplayable.
It was a fast leg break. It was a fast leg break.
It was. Leg break bowled at probably, there isn't really a speed gun, but probably must be 90 miles an hour, close to.
Yeah. I think he was very rapid. He was on the other side of it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and Wasim had so many things that made him so difficult to play. The fact that he hit a very short run up, he had a very quick arm. He would come up kind of from behind the umpire, and then next ball he gets Chris Lewis with the booming in swinger.
Yeah.
But a little capitalizing on the good work of the Pakistan sort of medium pacers and spinners, and Mushtaq Ahmed was brilliant throughout that tournament. It's also interesting, actually. I was watching a little bit of that final on YouTube for other sort of research reasons, and Richie Beno is talking about the fact that Inzamam actually goes off the field at some point, a much slimmer Inzamam, and he's saying that it's weirdly prophetic, actually, that this might be something that Inzamam has to look out for over the course of his career. I mean, he made a damn good career despite all that. But yeah, that was it's a little bit of a case of just everything came together for Pakistan in the way that has been in a way that's become sort of legendary. They really were struggling through the tournament. They were not the form team going into the tournament. They recalled Imran Khan, who was almost 40 by that point. They were within a few overs of going out of the tournament at one point in the group stage, and then came through, built that momentum. Mushtaq Ahmed clicked into gear. They had Wasim at the height of his certainly they had his speed, if not necessarily his skill. And England were a little bit reliant on that top order. A lot of one-day teams have been. Both of them was certainly waning by that point. He was only had a couple of years left of his career. His bowling certainly lacked the venom of old. This was in the phase of his trash get wickets, or the trash get wickets phase of his career.
Right.
And they tried to use him as a pinch hitter kind of up the order, and it didn't work quite as well as it could have done. But that was an England team full of big names and full of very good players. Lamb and Fairbrother were a little bit ahead of their time in the middle order, but it didn't come together for all of these reasons.
Right. So absolutely right. I mean, also one can also remember the spell Derek Pringle had at the beginning. 10 overs, 22 for 3 in a World Cup final. It's fantastic. That had 8 extras in those, 3 wides and 5 no balls as well. So, I mean, it's a fantastic spell. And you're absolutely right there. Aqib Javed sort of complimented him by taking 10 overs, 2 for 27. Right. But then around him were Wasim Akram and Mushtaq Ahmed. And of course, I think Imran Khan sort of chose to finish it off. It wasn't going to be one of those IPL finishes with 26 or 28 required in the final over, and it was going to be sort of a definite Pakistan victory, and he ensured that by taking the ball right in the final over. So
yeah, that's right. It was kind of, as ever, Imran ever the man for the big moment.
Indeed. Exactly. So, I mean, that leaves England really sort of like if you look at their overall record, as I was saying, they have been quarterfinalists 3 times. They have been semi-finalists 3 times. Semi-finalists 2 times and finalists 3 times. So, they are very strong. They're all the time very strong, except, they have not been able to win. So this is more the case of a ever the bridesmaid, never the bride sort of situation.
It's interesting you characterize it that because that isn't the impression of England that I have as a World Cup team. And this may be recency bias playing, but really from '96 onwards, they've largely been awful. They've had some 99, 2003, and 2015 were absolutely atrocious. 2011 they got through the group stage a little bit luckily. They had that tie against India, and 2015 was the worst of the lot. They'd been for various reasons, they've been quite a decent one-day international team up until 2013. They got to the final of the Champions Trophy, lost that in bizarre circumstances still. But they had a strong side. They had Jonathan Trott, who has a superb one-day international record. His strike rate doesn't stand up to modern scrutiny, but he was averaging 50, which is no mean feat. It had Kevin Peterson, they had Graham Swan bowling very, very well. But then the team that went to Australia and got whitewashed just broke apart completely.
Right.
And then the rebuilding took an awfully long time. Alistair Cook stayed on as captain for far, far too long. We still have a very vivid sense of memory on guerrilla cricket of doing the 7-match one-day international series in Sri Lanka, which was Alistair Cook's last series as captain, and it was just turgid. England just had no clue, and just found ever more ridiculous ways to lose this game and bring in Gary Ballance, who has a superb List A record, but was never able to make the step up to one-day international cricket, and had a bowling attack that was just cannon fodder.
Right. I mean, I think that they were going through some troughs at that point in time, I think. And I definitely agree. Probably Alistair Cook could have stepped aside a bit earlier, and maybe it would have helped his one-day career if he had stepped aside for another man to take over. And it's a longer discussion for sure. But now if you were to just quickly look at their, the star performers when it comes to batting and bowling for England. There are a couple of bolters in the top 5, but I don't know if you've had a look at the list already. Would you care to guess who's the most successful batter for England in the World Cups?
In the history of World Cups?
Yes.
Graham Gooch?
Yep, right in one. But then the rest of the top 5 is very interesting because I can tell you there are no current players in there, but that might not also be much of a surprise. But can we go through quickly with you? Who do you think is 2?
Alex Stewart?
Well, he's 5th actually. So, but that's a very good guess. But it's Bell at 2.
Right? Okay.
Yep. 718 runs, 21 matches, and then you have
Strauss?
Good guess, but Andrew Strauss is not even in the top 10, I think. But there are Alan Lamb, and then Graham Hick at 3 or 4, and then you have Alex Stewart rounding out the top 5. Kevin Peterson is just outside that. Then you have Brigadier Collie Block. Then you have Gatting, Gower, and Fairbrother. Sort of these are the top 10, right? But at the end of the day, you see the highest scorer is Gooch with 897 runs. The average is not bad, 44.85. But considering that he played from 1979 to 1992, that is 5 World Cups. That's not a great return, I would say. But it's okay. 4 World Cups. I'm sorry. That's still not a very great return. But that's how it is. England have always, there are no great record makers in England. There is Alistair Cook. He's the first English player to cross 10,000 runs, and for a country that has played 130 years of cricket, that's not a great thing. But then it's not like that at all, right? With the England team, which that they perform well as a team rather than you have these standout performers either with the bat or ball.
Usually. Now with Alistair Cook and James Anderson, with the amount of Test cricket that England play now, Anderson could go on for another 2 or 3 years the way he's going. He seems to be getting better and better, and it could challenge Shane Warne's record. I think Murali's a bit of a way off, but I think he could challenge Shane Warne in theory at least. Indeed.
Now, if you were to go on and look at the England's current squad or the professional squad that ECB has chosen, you can see that they have a very strong bowling lineup. So let's start from the bowling lineup. So you have David Willey, Chris Wokes, Mark Wood, Liam Plunkett, and Tom Curran making up the fast bowling stocks, right? Of these people, you can expect, you also can throw Jofra Archer into the mix now that he's been chosen for the one-off ODI versus Ireland, and also the T20 and ODIs against Pakistan. So maybe there's a bit of talk that one of Tom Curran, Liam Plunkett, or David Willey may make way, and we may have Jofra Archer take this player's place. It does seem a bit harsh on one of these players, but you never know. If you were to just think of it in terms of merit, you can expect that Jofra Archer would take his place in this team, right? Going forward, if you were to look at the top order of England, they have such a strong top order. You have Johnny Bairstow, who will open with Jason Roy. They are such a dominating opening partnership that you can expect that most teams would be a bit wary of them, especially in the opening power play, right? Then you have a very serene, or if required, an attacking Joe Root who can come out at number 3. Following that, you have Owen Morgan, who comes in at 4, and of course, you have Joss Butler, who's such a maverick player, isn't he? And moving on, what do you think about the spinners, Nakul?
Moeen Ali is incredibly dangerous. His ability to be incredibly fluent from the off, and with the ball, he and Adil Rashid complement each other beautifully. Adil Rashid is a world-class limited over spinner, a consistent wicket taker at any time of the innings, is rapidly developing into a good death bowler, has arguably the best in the world, can't pick, but Moeen Ali is consistent, very economical, and I think those two have made a huge difference. Having wicket-taking spinners is no team is going to do well in this World Cup without that. And I think we spoke about that about that last time.
Indeed. Then you have the likes of Jordan Lee, who's been chosen as a backup spinner. I think his batting also contributes to him being chosen ahead of somebody like Dawson, for example. And when it comes to bowling all-rounders, you always have Ben Stokes, who'll play most matches. And even though the England skipper might not count on him for all 10 overs in a ODI, I think he contributes with enough with both bat and ball so that he deserves his place in the 11. And of course, whichever one of Vokes, let's say Willie or Tom Curran will play, and maybe Jofra Archer, they will also chip in with the bat. So England are pretty much well matched there when it comes to bowling all-rounders in the squad. And also when it comes to keeping, you have Johnny Bairstow probably as the main keeper, or let's say Joss Butler as the main keeper, and if required, Johnny Bairstow can back him up very effectively. Vince has been chosen as the backup batter or backup opener as well. All in all, you can expect that this England squad is very well balanced and will make a very strong claim to winning the World Cup in the 2019 edition. Nakul has also told us his predictions off air, so I would like to quickly summarize them here. He feels that England will win 7 out of the 9 matches and they will finish first or second after the group stages. Their likely losses will be against India and New Zealand, and as a result he feels England will qualify for the knockouts. Also, he feels that England have the wherewithal and the skill set to go all the way in this tournament and win the World Cup 2019. We would like to thank Nakul for his participation in this section of the podcast. I hope he can come back and do another show with us sometime shortly. Do stay tuned into Guerrilla Cricket and do listen to them throughout the summer as they'll be covering the World Cup. Alright then, going on with the World Cup news section, the most important news we have this week is that Alex Hales, who had failed a hair follicle test earlier and had been given a 21-day, ban by ECB, is now dropped from the England World Cup squad. And we see that Ben Duckett, David Malan and James Vince have been called up for the various series ongoing in his place. And most likely James Vince is the one that is favored to take over his place in the England World Cup squad. Giri, did you follow this?
No, I only followed that Hales was dropped. I mean, I haven't gone through all the details here.
Right.
But, Hales has been in the news for quite a while, right? He had that incident also with Ben Stokes in Bristol. Wasn't that at Bristol? Yeah, it was at Bristol.
Right.
So I think he's a good player. It's a shame that he won't be part of the World Cup. But I still hope that he's given another chance to make a comeback to this squad. I think he's an essential part of this lineup, but he is an opener. I think he's probably a backup opener because right now Jason Roy and who's the other guy? Who's the other opener? Bairstow. These two guys have been doing tremendously well for England. So
Indeed.
I didn't see him as a replacement for either of them, unless of course one of them was injured. So backup opener in that case would be James Vince. Yeah.
Right.
You're right. Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, just going into it a little bit more, ECB instituted a hair follicle test pre-season and post-season with all the cricketers that are contracted with them. After Tom Maynard, a very young player from Surrey, was his life ended very tragically after he was found to be enjoying or abusing, whichever way you look at it, some recreational drugs. As a result, after this, ECB made it a part of their policy to test all players that are contracted with them. And in one such test is when Alex Hales was caught, enjoying some recreational drug. But it's really unfortunate, as you say, that this guy's career has been up and down. He's only now recently made a comeback into the team, having restituted himself and sort of rebuilding his image. But it looks like he was dropped from the England squad after Ian Morgan came out strongly in favor of this and said that he let his teammates down and he was not sufficiently, let's say, remorseful when the news broke. And he did not apologize to his teammates, and he was not aware of the kind of impact this news would have on his teammates going into a World Cup. That was one of the reasons why I think they chose to drop him. And also, I think Alex Giles has come out and said that they were unable to talk about it until the news became public. You saying?
Ashley Giles, I think.
Ashley, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It was too many Alexes.
Indeed. Yeah.
So Ashley Giles came out, the head of ECB has come out and said that they were unable to comment on it until the news became public. But once the news became public, he has revealed that this positive drug test may have sort of sealed Hales's fate when it comes to his removal from the World Cup squad. It's very unfortunate. He's a very talented player, and I hope he shapes up. That's all we can say about it, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. Moving onwards, we have a couple of interesting pieces of news from the Bangladeshi cricket team regarding the World Cup. So first of all, Bangladesh have added Taskin Ahmed and Farhad Raza. Taskin Ahmed, the fast bowler, and medium pace all-rounder Farhad Raza have been added to the Tri-Series in Ireland, which begins next week, right? So this means basically they've also added Naeem Hassan, an off-spinning all-rounder, Yasir Ali as well. Right. So basically they have 19 people they've taken to Ireland because they want to try a few more people and maybe they may make some changes to the World Cup squad. Right. We were sort of already predicting that, Taskin Ahmed might be a part of the squad, and it took us by surprise when they announced a squad without him, at least. And I think they're sort of trying to remedy that. So all squads really that have been named by the corresponding boards were sort of provisional effectively until 23rd of May. Right, Giri?
Yeah,
so as a result, it looks like they can still sort of fix this or replace a couple of their players in their 15, just like what England might, what we just discussed. So well, we'll see how this shapes up going in a couple of weeks now. And another important news that comes from the Bangladesh cricket team regarding the World Cup is the format of their jersey. It looks like ICC had directed them to have an all green jersey, with even the names of the players and the name of the team being in green, in a different green, of course. But the fans of Bangladeshi cricket team were not happy to leave out the color red, which is a part of their flag and very instrumental in their, let's say, colored clothing all through, right? And so as a result of this, Bangladesh team has chosen to retain red in their jersey design, so to say. Right. Yeah. Another small news. When this newly designed jersey was revealed, it looks like Shakib Al Hasan, who was already in the stadium as a part of a pre-season meetup or say a pre-World Cup meetup. So sort of there was some miscommunication going on, and by the time they wanted to take a team photo, Shakib Al Hasan had already left the ground and returned to his house.
Yeah, but it was probably the wrong jersey, right?
Maybe it might have been the wrong jersey thing.
Yeah, so I think it's all probably okay in the end.
I mean, when you look at what Nazmul Hasan, the BCB chief, had to say, he sort of hinted that maybe Shakib Al Hasan was playing a prima donna there. We don't know if that was the case because he's just returned from IPL. Maybe he was recalled from the Sunrisers squad.
Yeah,
he played the match, and rightly so because his team Bangladesh lives to play some ODI series in Ireland against West Indies and Ireland. So maybe there may be a case of bit of a prima donna behavior, but maybe it was just miscommunication. We really don't. Right?
It's fine.
All right. Moving on, the next piece of news is that Shoaib Malik has been given 10-day leave based on compassionate grounds. Did you read this?
No, I haven't had a chance to look at what happened here, but I just know that he's been given, some time off. Does it mean? Yeah, I hope. I mean, I don't want to read too much into this. I don't know what is going on there, but I hope he comes back to the squad, with a good state of mind. I hope it's not anything serious.
Indeed. I mean, given that the way it was announced, it might not be usual backbiting or bickering that we know, but it might be something personal that might be going on.
Yeah.
So, well, let's see how it goes. Those were all the World Cup news that we had to sort of discuss today. But going on, maybe we can take a quick look at the other news. So in the other news, uh, we have well, first of all, let's quickly look at the conflict of interest issue with Tendulkar. Uh, well, Tendulkar has come out with a 14-point response, right? That basically means that he has responded to the ombudsman of PCCI saying that there is no conflict of interest as far as he's concerned because there has been no monetary compensation. He's the Mumbai Indians icon. He's mostly present in the home games, I think, where he's wearing the jersey and seen in and around the setup. But he says there is no monetary compensation ever, right?
Okay.
So, well, that was a very long, drawn out, almost legally right reply. I will not go into that. What do you have to say about this, Kire?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think he's a man of integrity, so I'm not going to question that when he says that. So let's leave it there. Let's
Right,
leave it there.
right, right. So, next thing is that, well, we saw that Namibia have clinched the WCL Division 2 title. That basically means that, in their match in the final, they have beaten Oman and they've been crowned as the World Cricket League Division 2 champions. So this basically means Namibia have won their first ever ODI because they played in the 2003 World Cup, if you remember.
Yeah,
But
I remember that. Yeah.
6-0. There were no matches. Those are all ODIs. But now that they have regained ODI status, they have celebrated it by winning their first ever ODI as well and
Yeah.
won a final. That was very nice, right? Another small but not so nice news is that, well, Sri Lankan cricket have called off the Pakistan's under-19 tour of Sri Lanka after the Easter weekend attacks, right? Because they want to review their security situation and so on. It's very unfortunate. I really hope Sri Lanka does not go the way of Pakistan when it comes to the player security and other things, because I know there are some ongoing, let's say, religious tensions and other things going on there, but we really hope they're able to sort it off and this doesn't, bleed into cricketing relations. Let's see how it goes, right? The next thing, well, is that, well, Alex Hepburn, the player who was found guilty on a sexual assault case, has now been sentenced to 5 years of imprisonment, Giri. So regarding this, I think a friend of the podcast, Tasneem Samar Khan, has written a very powerful blog article, and we would like to, let's say, redirect our listeners and our friends to this article. And she's had some very strong opinions about this, and Nakul also had some very strong opinions about this. He expressed them to me off air, of course. And those that are interested can go read this article. And she's a human rights lawyer, and she's made a very strong case on why this is the right sort of a decision, right? Going forward, some very nice news. Kumar Sangakkara, the erstwhile Sri Lankan cricket great, right?
Still is, I think.
He still is. And this will do no less, this piece of news, to enhance this, that he's been chosen as the next MCC president. So starting from October 1st, he'll take over as the MCC president for a 1-year, let's say, stint, right?
Yeah.
And, well, he's the first non-British person ever in the history of the MCC club to, begin as a president. So I think a lot of kudos to Sangakkara and our congratulations to him, Kiri.
Yeah. I think really befitting his personality, and it's a crowning achievement. I think it's probably MCC's gain by making him the president. He's, I know we all know what a statesman he is, even outside of cricket.
Indeed.
So I wish him all the best, or we wish him all the best in this role, and I hope, the MCC president gets to do what he can do, as a foreigner.
Right. Well, I mean, he's played the game long enough to know at every stage, right? At every step. And also, I mean, if you've heard his county lecture or some such, you would see what a statesman this person is, as you rightly pointed, what a statesman. Yeah? And there are also rumors that on the day he retired from international cricket, he was offered Sri Lankan ambassadorship to UK because he was going to be playing county cricket for a couple more seasons. and he chose to stay away from that role. But this sort of, let's say, his mindset and his opinions have always been recognized. He's a lawyer, he's a trained lawyer, and I'm sure whenever you see him on TV or whenever you see him, elucidating about any topic about cricket, you see that statesmanship shine through. As a result, I think this is the right sort of a person to bring. Also they've gone for new blood. He's hardly 40, I think.
Yeah.
So that's the right thing. I think he takes over from Mike Gatting, if I'm not wrong. But maybe this can be revisited. But at the end of the day, a newly retired cricketer being chosen as an MCC president is a right move, also from the body that sort of governs cricket, right? Or rather, governs the rules that cricket is played with, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. The next piece of news is, we are going to clarify, or the player himself has clarified, one of the most, let's say, intriguing mysteries that has gone on in cricket in the last 20 years.
One of the world's unsolved mysteries, right?
Indeed, it very well might be. Shahid Afridi, the Pakistan cricketing great, has revealed in his autobiography that he is actually not as, let's say, 38 or 39-year-old as we believe, but more like 43 or 44-year-old. So he's revealed that he's actually born in 1975, not 1980 as previously assumed. That means, well, it doesn't take shine of any of his achievements and his records, but, well, it just gives us more, let's say, respect for this person, because he's 43 or 44 rather than just 39. We know the people from that part of the world are very strong. Misbah has shown it. Imran had showed it, and Yunus Khan has showed it, and this guy just takes it to the next level. He's 43, 44, and if you look at his achievements in the latest PSL, he played 8 matches, took 10 wickets at a run rate of just 6.74. So his effectiveness is as good as ever. Giri?
Yeah. Come to think of it, I think he played that explosive innings in 1996 in Kenya, if I'm not wrong.
Right.
I think at that time that was the fastest century, 37-ball century.
Indeed.
Wasn't that against Sri Lanka?
Mm-hmm.
And he announced basically his, himself to the world that he's one of those explosive batsmen. He continued in the same vein, I would say, for many more years, although not always effective. He didn't always convert his starts into bigger scores. What Afridi reminds me of is that famous Test match against India in Ferozshah Kotla, 1999.
Indeed.
Himself and Saeed Anwar, they were playing so well. I think he opened in that Test match, and I think Afridi may even have scored a century then, if I'm not wrong, in that match. I don't know. I mean, sorry.
Was this the Kumble 10 for matches?
Exactly.
First innings, possibly.
Yeah. So I think they were chasing a target of 420, and these two guys had put on 150 or something already. India were running out of ideas until I think this guy, A.V. Jayaprakash, raised his finger and gave him out.
Well, there may have been some merit to the appeal, but we will never know, right?
You will never know, but it probably, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to comment on a decision that was made on the field, and it's now in the record books.
Exactly.
It's part of the game, but it reminds me of all those wonderful innings that Afridi has played. And 1999, according to his current revelation, would have made in 24, an age of 24 back then. So he was not a 19-year-old as he had made us believe back then, or probably the official records had made us believe. But it, as you said, it's such a strong personality, strong, physically so strong that he could continue playing competitive cricket even at the age of 43 or 44. Another name that pops up in your head, Ajit?
Well, I mean, Misbah, my favorite.
Misbah. But I think his age was probably the right one for a change. And I think I also read somewhere that Yunus Khan also had a different age than what was mentioned in the official records. I think the official records probably say he was born in 1977 or something, and he was probably 2 or 3 years older than that. And he also, if you count those years in, I think he also played well into his 40s, or even very close to his 40th
Yes,
year.
Well, I mean, there
And
was a small correction there, I think. What happened was when he retired after winning the T20 World Cup, if you remember,
yeah,
he said that, this is the, let's say, the game of youngsters. This was 2009.
mm,
And he claimed to be around 34 or 35 then.
yeah,
And PCB insisted he was 31, of course. But what happened was that means when he retired, he was also 40, 41.
yeah,
You're absolutely
yeah.
right.
So, and one of the current players right now in the world,
Mm.
another guy who, we may not know his real age, but official records say that he's 20 years old now. And you know who
Rashid
we are
Khan.
talking about. Yeah.
Rashid Khan. Yeah,
Also
yeah.
from same region, but from Afghanistan, in fact. So,
I mean, just across a couple of miles on the other side, I'm sure. But I mean, look, he looks like a very mature 20-year-old. Let me put it like this. Right?
yeah.
But and his cricket and his actions also show that. If you ever heard him speak, he sounds really mature.
Mm,
I'm not discrediting any 20-year-old out there who can't be that mature, but this guy has a very mature outlook on life, right?
mm, mm.
And it shines through when he speaks. But nonetheless, I mean, we'll see. Maybe he has an autobiography coming up in a couple of decades, and we know his real age, or if that is his real age. Look, age is just a number, and
Yeah.
these guys, be it Afridi, be it Misbah, be it Yunus, or be it Rashid Khan, at the end of the day, that's what they're proving to us. If you were to follow Dylan Thomas's poem, Rage Against the Night, all that, right? So these guys are living proof of that thing. You don't accept aging lightly, or you don't accept aging and defeat that, age, which it will defeat all of us. But let's say, these guys are our, let's say, we can take inspiration from these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Well
All
said.
right. All right. This brings to close all the important news that we want to cover this week. That gives us a chance to go on with the trivia question for this week. All right. So, in keeping with our tradition of sort of, let's say, asking a trivia question about the team that we discussed this episode, the question for this week is who bowled the first ever ball in an ODI and who faced it? Right? So, if you've heard us discuss the England preview section, I think we've mentioned this player a couple of times, at least the batter. So, that's the clue you have. Right? All right then. As always, we say we keep our fans in our mind when we talk about this, that please talk about our podcast with your cricketing friends. Make our podcast more popular if possible. And if you have any comments about how our podcast is going, get in touch with us. Right? You can always get in touch with us through our mail ID, which is armchair.cricket@gmail.com, or our Twitter handle, which is @armchaircricket, armchaircrickpod. Right? We have a Facebook page. You can leave us some comments on there, or you can also leave us comments in whichever podcasting app you follow, be it Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Castbox, any of these, right? We'll be usually monitoring these, and anything you say will be, received gratefully. Also, we have a very interesting guest joining us for next week when we review India's chances at the World Cup. I hope you can join us for the upcoming episodes, and we'll also have some special let's say sections in the World Cup once the World Cup begins, and we'll be reviewing that in detail with some of our guests. We may have some recurring guests as well, right? So, well, that brings us to the close of this podcast. Having said all that, it's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from him.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to the Armchair Cricket Podcast.